Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for Zooming in today with us. Good afternoon. We will wait just about a minute or so to have everybody join us before we get started. Thank you all for Zooming in today. Just give us about a minute and we'll wait for everybody to get into the session. Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. Give us about a minute here and we'll wait for everybody to enter the session before we get started. Awesome. But a couple more seconds here for everybody to join us. Good afternoon. All right. We'll get started right now. Thank you for Zooming in today with us. On behalf of the Sandbox Centre team, welcome to our Experts in Residence session, Marketing 101. For those who haven't been acquainted with me or the Sandbox, I'm Mackenzie. I'm one of the 5 members of the team. We're located downtown Barrie and online to connect people and their ideas to business resources on their journey to success. Today, we're thrilled to have expert Daryl Woytowicz from NetGain SEO join us to show you how to boost your online visibility on a shoestring budget. I know everybody is in need of some expert advice, but really people are scaling back right now on their budget, so it's the perfect timely topic. Before we get started, just a quick reminder for everybody to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We'll be monitoring this throughout the session, so if you have any questions come across your mind, pop them in there and we'll do our best to answer as many of the questions as possible. Thank you to all of our community partners for supporting with the sharing of our events. And of course, a huge thank you to our sponsor, NetGain SEO, for delivering today's session. So without further ado, we'll give Daryl the floor and I'll hand it over to you, Daryl. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mackenzie. I'm delighted to be here. I got bad news. If anyone just had a really big lunch and feeling sleepy, this might not be the webinar for you. We'll try to change that. We're talking about online visibility, which in itself is hard enough, and then doing it on a shoestring budget or maybe no budget might be even more difficult. So I'll just unpack that title just quickly, although I think it's reasonably self-explanatory. But when I talk about boosting online visibility, what I'm referring to is when someone that is not one of your customers yet is looking for your type of products or service, how do they go about finding you? Well, they type in their search into Google, right? And are you showing up? If not, how can we change that? You can spend a lot of money trying to boost your online visibility, but we're going to look at some tips today that hopefully you can do yourself that will make a significant impact on your Google ranking. That's commonly known as search engine optimization or SEO for short, and I've just called it online visibility here. So just by way of kind of self-introduction, I'm Daryl Woytowicz. I work with NetGain. We're a full-service digital marketing agency in Barrie, right on Bayfield Street. So by full service, SEO, obviously, we build websites, we do social media campaigns, we do pay-per-click advertising. So anything kind of digital marketing related, we can handle it. We're a certified Google partner, which is, I would think, is comforting to know. And we have done SEO since our beginning back in 2008. And with 12 years, you know, it's kind of like dog years, 1 dog year till 7 like human years. Because digital marketing and just digital in general moves so quickly, it's like we've been a website company for 98 years. So I like to think that we know what we're doing. Things have evolved and they continue to change. So I'm going to go over some current best practices. All right, let's dive in. Well, SEO is not for everyone. There's old Dwight Schrute. You know, there's still a space for and a reason for traditional advertising. I think what you need to do is think about how your customers will go about finding you. And if the answer to that is they're doing a search in Google, then I would suggest that digital marketing is pretty important. SEO is pretty important. Otherwise, I won't be offended if you drop off the call and continue on with your Yellow Page ad. For everyone else, Now, this is an awfully cynical question of you to ask. Isn't SEO just smoke and mirrors? I'm not offended by your question. I can see why you ask it. And you know what? People ask me, I guess, a version of that question is, isn't SEO dead? Well, if you're ranking on page 2 or you're ranking on page 3, then I would argue that SEO is not dead, and it'll help you get onto that first page of Google search results. So what about the smoke and mirror bit? Well, I kind of agree a little bit. SEO can be complex. The tools and tips and tricks and techniques I have for you today are not complex. So this is a 101 level class. I'm going to keep it simple and some actionable things that you can do at the end of this presentation. But I do get that, it can be technical. Intangible, well, that is true. When someone visits your website, they're not going to see all the hard work you did on the SEO side to get you to that first page, because a lot of it is invisible. The only one that really sees that SEO work is Google. And Google's the one that's deciding how to rank you. So yes, you're right, it is intangible, and people will not see it physically on the website for the most part. And delayed benefit, this is a killer. Even if I were to wave a magic wand and we do all the exact right things that Google wants to see today, it can still take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. If you've got a brand new website, be prepared for a full year before you're ranking anywhere near the front page. So a lot of the things that we're going to do today will not have overnight effect, but they are important. They'll have lasting effects too. So the things that we do will be good for a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. Yeah, so don't be like this guy. And by now you can see my fondness for vintage television and movies, and also my fondness for memes. But just realign your expectations that these improvements are super important, but they will take some time to sink in. Now, the number one question I am asked almost on a daily basis is, how quickly can I get to page 1? Now, ironically, getting to page 1 isn't always the most difficult thing in the world, even if you're on page 2 or 3 or 4. A lot depends on your industry and how competitive it is. Let's see, I put this slide in here for a reason. I think that I was going to go with a silver lining, that I do a lot of Google searches and evaluating the results. And the silver lining for most industries is that there are a lot of companies that don't deserve to be on the first page. They're just there because Google doesn't have a better alternative. So unless you're in a hyper-competitive industry, if you're a real estate agent with a brand new website, you may never get to the first page. But for most others, it is totally doable to get to that first page, and just take a look at who's on that first page and maybe take a page out of their playbook. We can get there. But there's always a follow-up question. And the follow-up question is, once you get onto the first page, is, well, how do I get to the top now? And really those top 3 spots are the ones that get the most click-throughs. So being at the bottom of the first page, well, at least you're in the game, but you want to percolate, if you can, to the top. So we're going to talk today about some strategies for getting you there. During my presentation, I am going to reference Google an awful lot, and with good reason. As a search engine, never mind the web browser, Google Chrome, but the search engine itself, worldwide, has got, I think it's around 92, 93% market share, which is phenomenal. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time optimizing for Bing and Yahoo and some of the other search engines. Today's topic is going to be geared very much for Google. Google doesn't actually publish stats on how many searches, but it's widely believed to be in the low single-digit trillions. When you say low single-digit, it doesn't sound like much until you add that word trillion. What Google does publish is that they do see a 10% increase every year. And this is interesting to me. They also let people know that 15% of those searches Google has never seen before. So there's something we can capitalize on there. And I think the reason for that is the way people are searching. A lot more people now are searching using voice and their smartphone. Instead of typing in their inquiry, they're dictating it out loud. So Google's seeing these what's called a long tail keyword, so a long phrase instead of just 1 or 2 words. And there's ways that we can capitalize on that, which we'll address. All right, if you're all still with me, let's continue on. This is where it all starts. And I know you've all done a Google search before, but I need you to do something for me. So this is your first homework assignment. You're going to be searching for your own products and services. And actually, maybe before you do that, you should just get a reality check on whether you're ranking for your company name. So if you're not ranking on page 1 for your own company name, then Houston, we've got a problem. But assuming that you are ranking somewhere on page 1 when you type out, whatever your company is, then that's a good first step. But what about your products and services? So let's just take your top 10 products and services, and you're going to get a baseline to find out how you're ranking and which ones are ranking better and who your competitors are. This is a fantastic exercise. I'll get you to do one thing when you do this. I'm going to ask you to do an incognito search. Because you have probably visited your own website before, Google is going to be more inclined to serve that up in the search rankings. So you want to search as though you've never even heard of your company before. You've never used this type of products before. So if you're like a pool company, and maybe it's the first time someone's ever built a pool, they've never visited any pool companies before. So you want to act like you're a brand new customer with a clean slate. So if you do an incognito search, it's the 3 buttons or the 3 dots on the top right, and then just open a new incognito window. You'll get a page that looks something like this. And if you're using a different browser, I think whether it's Firefox or Microsoft Edge, they all have some version of like a incognito type search. So I suggest you go about it this way. So if I'm going to take my own advice, I would search for one of our product offerings, which is SEO. You don't have to type Barry. Google basically knows where you are searching from, but in this case, I'll type SEO or SEO company Barry, or with my pool example, you might do in-ground pool company Barry, in-ground pool contractor, but something like that. So put yourself in the shoes of your audience and how they might search. And they're not going to use industry jargon, and they're not going to use acronyms and terms for the most part. So stay away from that and just use natural language when you're doing your searches. So you might do a few different searches for any one product. Then we want to take a critical look at what comes up next. So we've all seen search results before, but I do want to show you kind of the anatomy of how that page is laid out. The first thing that you see when you hit enter are ads. And depending on your industry, there could be 1, 2, 3, or as many as 4 different pay-per-click ads. This is a really quick way to get in the first page of Google is to pay your way onto the first page. But this is SEO on a shoestring budget. So we're going to maybe talk about that another day. And I've got an entire presentation dedicated to pay-per-click advertising or digital advertising, as it's called. That's the first thing you see. As you scroll down the page, if you're a bricks and mortar business, then the map section is commonly called the map stack or the local 3-pack, because there's usually just 3 that are listed. That is so important to be listed there. Again, I'm not going to touch on that on today's session. There isn't enough time. It's a big enough concept that it deserves its own seminar. So stay tuned. If Sandbox is good enough to invite me back, we'll have a discussion on that. What we're interested in is where the overwhelming majority of searchers go. And I don't know the stats exactly. I think it was 80% or 85% of people go to this section, which is commonly referred to as organic listing or your natural listing. So it's not paid in any way, shape, or form. There's always 10 of them. So that's what you want to crack into. It's that top 10 and how to do that. And below this, this list of 10, there's another. There could be another set of ads depending on what you're searching for. And not to be too self-congratulatory, but if you take a close look at number 1, it's reassuring to see that this presentation is brought to you by a company who knows how to get to page 1, position 1 in a pretty competitive landscape. So let's do a sample search and take a look at what influences who rises to the top and who sinks down to the bottom. So I think I must have been hungry when I put this presentation together. We're just going to search for cupcakes. Again, you input whatever search parameters are relevant to your industry, whether it's a product or if you're a service-based type company. this case, looking for cupcakes. And there's 10 of them. I think I've cut the list off here, but why is it that the company way up top, that iwantacupcake.com and Sugar City, why are they up top? And then companies like JY Cakes are way down at the bottom. There's got to be a reason for it. And there is. One of the things I can tell just from glancing at this page is I always like to look for the security certificate. When you see that HTTPS, that S stands for secure, it's a SSL certificate. So here's your first kind of low cost thing that you can do is if you don't have that, that padlock beside your URL, your domain name, when you go onto your own website, then please call your web host and get one installed. You're going to be asking for an SSL certificate. And this provides a small little rankings boost. It is a ranking factor. It's not a big one, but SEO, as we'll find out, is made of doing a lot of things, a lot of little things, right? Instead of one giant thing, right? So begs the question, if you're paying close attention, that third line down, Cupcake of Berry, how on earth did they make it to the top 3, which is the prime real estate? Those top 3 spots are the ones that get the most click-throughs. So it's great that JYK and some others may be on the first page, but those first 3 are the ones that most people are going to click on. So really that's where you want to be located. So how on earth is Cupcake Berry? There must be something else going on there for them to rank in the top 3. And certainly there are. By some estimates, Google looks at 200 different factors on how to decide where to place your company. And here's some of them. Yeah, and that's only some of them. And this is a pretty long list. I made you a promise at the beginning of the presentation that I wasn't going to get too technical. A lot of these things are technical in nature. We are, not that we're going to dumb it down, but we're going to carefully select I think the ones that are going to be the biggest bang for your buck without having to learn how to code, and will still make a really positive difference. So I'm assuming everyone's had enough time to write those down. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Oh, you had me at free. That's why you came to this presentation. It was a whole shoestring budget, right? So I have got 3 tools to suggest, and these are tools that are available for anybody. They're all Google products, which is the exact right company you want to have built these tools for you. But most people don't use them or don't know about them, or maybe for whatever reason, they're not concerned about their ranking. So we're going to take a look at 3 sort of in sequence here. The first one is called Google PageSpeed Insights. So it's a developer tool, but you can find it online just by doing a search for PageSpeed Insights. And the way it works is super easy. You just cut and paste your URL or your website name. That's the www.yourcompany.com, or just type it. And then you press the Analyze button, and we'll see what Google thinks of your speed. It doesn't matter where you're searching from. This is Google's loading speed on their servers. So I have chosen a customer here. I hope that they're not on the call, but you can see I'm not above public shaming. So just be lucky that I didn't choose your company. We've got this Max People HR company here, and oh no, they're ranking 6 out of 100. That is not good. Google is going to give you 2 different scores. They're going to give you a score for loading on mobile and a score for loading on desktop. If you're like most companies, even if you're in the B2B world, most of your traffic is going to be about 50% mobile or smartphone traffic. And if you're doing commercial, or rather residential or consumer grade products and services, it might be 60, 70, 80% mobile. So you really have to pay attention to your mobile loading speed. Now, 6 out of 100 is bad for 2 reasons. It's a double whammy. Number one is these days, people have short little attention spans. They are not patient enough to wait, what is it? I see here 7 seconds for your website to load. In fact, Google did a study a couple of years ago. You can expect to lose 50% of your traffic if your site takes longer than 3 seconds to load. So you want to be on the right side of that 3 seconds, not the wrong side of that 3 seconds. So people just will not wait. they'll bounce from your site or abandon their search and go down the list to your competitor. The other thing to think about is Google doesn't want to rank you. This is a pretty significant ranking factor. And if you've got a slow loading page or slow loading homepage, put yourself in Google's shoes. They want to give the best possible results to searchers. And they don't want to rank in the top 3 or anywhere on the first page, a site that takes forever to load. The reason being, it's not good value because people don't want to visit that site. So it's a double whammy. Google is going to penalize you in the rankings and people won't want to visit your site. So I'm just going to scroll down this page. Google gives you some, bless their hearts, they give you some helpful tips to remedy this. Unfortunately, a lot of them are technical, but in this particular case, there's a smoking gun. Those first 4 recommendations, I see the word images, 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 images. This is, for most sites that I see, one of the biggest problems is they haven't scaled their images properly. They're taking photos on their cell phone, which are 3 and 4 megabytes, and uploading them directly and not scaling them properly. So this definitely lies a little bit on the technical side, but if you can work with whoever designed your website, or if you're in the habit of uploading pictures, please just make sure that they're scaled properly. There's maybe a dozen other things that affect the speed, but the images is a big one. All right, moving on. Here's the next tool, another Google product. This one's called Google Trends. And admittedly, this doesn't directly affect your SEO, but this is your compass. This will inform your decisions on what pages to optimize and what products to optimize for, and almost nobody knows about it. It's another free tool. Just do a Google search for Google Trends. You'll get a page that looks something like this, and just enter a search term or topic. So I'll give you a couple quick examples of how the tool works and then how you can use it. So I did a search here for hair clippers, and you can see this spike. This is for the last year. I think when that quarantine hit in March, suddenly April rolls around and people realize, boy, the hairstylist, the hair salon's closed, the barber's closed, my hair's getting shaggy, what am I gonna do? So searches for hair clippers and hair dye went through the roof. And they have trailed off now that those salons and barber shops have opened back up. But this is the kind of trends that you're gonna be looking for. I like this tool because you can drill down and get worldwide stats, US, Canada, provincial, even some cities. I don't know that you can get very trends, but certainly GTA or Toronto. You can look last 12 months. You can choose your category if you want, if you're into health and beauty, whatever that happens to be. For the time being, I just left it all kind of blank. So how can we use this for your business? So again, I did a search here. I was back to my theme on being hungry that day. I did a search for cupcakes. And this is a pretty long, this is worldwide data, but you could drill down for Canada. This is a long timeline. This is all the way back to 2004. You can see this isn't search rankings or search results in any way. This is people doing searches. So it's a gauge, putting a pulse on, or your finger on the pulse of public sentiment and how interested they are in your products or services. So it looks like interest peaked back in 2012 or 2013. The thing that's really cool about this tool is you can take your next product and do a side-by-side comparison. So I realize I'm speaking to a pretty broad audience today, so can't give concrete examples, but if you're a baker and you're wondering what product to offer, or you've got a page for each of these things and you're wondering which one to optimize first, well, here's your answer. And this is why it's called Google Trends, because we're interested in those trend lines. You can see that rapid increase in the blue line for cupcakes, which is then steadily declined, whereas donuts is rising. And it looks like it overtook cupcakes back maybe a year or two ago and is now outperforming cupcakes. You can add a third parameter. And I've added bagels as my third parameter. So maybe if you're in the insurance industry, for you, this is home insurance, life insurance, and car insurance, whatever those 3 products are. In the last 3 or 4 months, we have seen a real shift in the way people are buying and the products and services that they're buying. I think things have loosened up, but you can still imagine there's quite a bit of trepidation on the part of customers on what they're willing to spend money on. I know all of you have had impact on your bottom line. Well, the purchasers too, maybe in a situation where they're watching every penny. So we have heard that term pivot products in the last couple months, and that is taking a look at your portfolio of products and deciding which of these ones are ones that are resonating with customers and that they're gravitating to, and then focusing on that. And maybe it's a core product that people just aren't, not that they're not interested in, but they're just not ready to make those purchases that they were pre-COVID. So this tool is super handy for that, to find out what people are searching for. So in this particular case, if I've got 3 pages on my website, cupcake, donut, and bagel, I can see that donut's a clear winner. Bagel is also starting to increase, but not at the same rate as donut. Or if you're wondering if you want to make a new product offering, this can give you your answer. So I strongly encourage you to check out this free product. The final product I want to talk about, and maybe what we'll do, if there's a few questions, Mackenzie, maybe we can just pause after this and take a look at some.
For sure.
So that I'll encourage everyone, if something doesn't quite make sense or you're curious about SEO, just send your questions in. So this is leaning a little bit more on the technical side, and I've just got the one slide for this after this slide. Google Search Console. This is like the best kept secret. If you're going to sign up for it, again, it's completely free. It's not quite as easy, not to say easy to use, but there's a sign up process. So you need to have your domain registration login. So if, for example, if you registered your domain with, I don't know, let's say GoDaddy, then you'd need to have those domain logins handy when you go to implement this tool or enable this tool. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward to use. And again, just search for Google Search Console. So instead of guessing, remember we were looking at that search engine results page of those 10 organic listings. So if you're at the bottom and you're scratching your head thinking, well, why does Google hate me? Google will tell you why they hate you and what's wrong with your page and what's wrong with your website. They're more than happy to do so. And in fact, it's in their best interest. They want to offer the best possible user experience for their searches. And they want you to be have a better website and offer a better user experience. So it's in their best interest and it's in your best interest. And what I find is it's just staggering to me, the number of businesses that just don't care or don't bother to understand, or maybe they don't get new traffic online. Maybe they get it some other way and it's not important to them. But I think for everyone attending this seminar today, it's pretty important to have people be able to discover your company online through a search. So Google will tell you what is wrong. Then at least you've got a starting point, whether you can embark on that yourself or whether you call in a professional to help. At least you'll know what your checklist is of things to fix. This is the second bullet point too, I think is fascinating. You can see, this goes hand in hand with the Google Trends we were looking at just a moment ago. You can actually find out for people that visited your site, what did they type in? And that is golden. Once you know the types of searches that people are either typing in or speaking into their smartphone, then you can get an idea for sort of the temperament of your customer. And then you can work on a content strategy around some of those keywords, those words that they typed in that brought them to your site. You can set up alerts. If you're constantly updating your site and Google sees something it doesn't like, they'll tell you, they'll send you an email saying, hey, we don't like this. It's a great way to submit updated content if you're making changes to your site or you're maybe redeveloping your site. If you don't, it's no big deal. Google will eventually come around and index your site. You may have heard the term Google bots. You can think of it like a little internet robot or spider, as they've commonly referred to, that will come around and crawl your website. Just think of it like Google is taking a look at your site. Although it's not a human, it's an algorithm. But they don't do that every day. Maybe they don't do it every week. Maybe they're visiting your website once a month, but you've just published something like super awesome that you want to get, the world to know about, so you can submit your updated content to Google. So you don't have to, you're not at their mercy to wait around for the Google bots to come and crawl. So it's just like a super tool, and you can, on an ongoing basis, just monitor how you're doing in search, whether you're on page 2 or 3 or 1 or where you are in the rankings. So Mackenzie, maybe that's not a bad place just to kind of hit pause for a moment and see if there's any questions, and if you can give me any softball questions, that'd be appreciated.
Absolutely. So one question we have here, do we have to have SEO words on every page of our website, or just the main pages?
SEO words?
Maybe they mean keywords?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they mean, Mackenzie. Yeah, so be careful. I've got a whole separate seminar on SEO words or keywords and content. I'm going to touch on that ever so slightly at the end of this presentation. But I would say the answer is yes, but be careful. So again, going back to my bakery example, if you're a bakery, you do not want to say, for Barry's Best Bakery, visit the bakery that has been baking baked goods that are the best in town. Google will see right through that. That's called keyword stuffing, and you will get penalized for it. Ironically, when NetGain started out, that tactic was perfectly acceptable. But now it actually will bring you a penalty. So my suggestion is to write for the benefit of the customer using high value content, high quality content. Do not pander to Google. That doesn't mean that you can't sprinkle in keywords, but a rule of thumb is to keep it at 3%. So if you've got a page with, let's say 1,000 words, then you might have that keyword 30 times on that page as a maximum. So just be careful, but yes, you should have clearly outline what it is that you do and where it is that you do it. And be sure to use, pseudonyms isn't the right word, but be sure to use interchangeable words. Like before we were talking about in-ground pools or swimming pools, like change it up, keep it natural.
Okay.
Maybe one more question if there is.
Yeah, definitely. So there's actually 2 here that kind of are similar, and I think you touched on it at the beginning of your presentation. So is it necessary to buy Google AdWords to show up on search engines? And the other question is similar. How do I boost the company's online visibility organically? Do we need to pay for Google Ads? So they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, sure. So what we're talking about today is boosting it organically. If you're in a situation where you need to get on the first page this afternoon, you're probably listening in on the wrong webinar. That's pay-per-click. In a perfect world, you will dominate the pay-per-click section, you'll dominate that map stack section, and you'll dominate the organic rankings. But knowing that most people, not everyone, but most people tend to go to the organic rankings, you don't need to have that pay-per-click. If you're ranking, every customer's a little bit differently. Once they start percolating up in the rankings, maybe they'll cut their budget a little bit on ads. It's difficult to predict exactly how people are going to navigate and search and find your company, but certainly if you do all these kind of fundamental things right, and the nice thing about all the hard work you do on these fundamentals are going to have long-lasting benefit, whereas if you pull your budget on pay-per-click ads, poof, you're gone that day. So hopefully that's a roundabout way of answering those questions. Keep them coming in. I've just got a few more pages left. It's a fairly short presentation today, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some more Q&A. So keep the questions coming. Oh, best presentation ever. More stuff you can do for free. So this would fall into the category of non-technical, but some of it, if done correctly, is super important to boosting your organic rankings. So I'm going to talk about these three things just on my last 3 slides, and then maybe some more time for questions and answers. Social media, as I call it, a necessary evil. I mean, there's two primary reasons for doing it, and that's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek saying a necessary evil, but again, depending on your industry. The altruistic reason for doing a really good job on social media is to engage with your clients and get people excited about your product without being too salesy. But from an SEO perspective, to me, there's a more important reason to do a good job on social media. Is because it's a ranking factor. So if done properly, your intent is to, maybe not on every single social media post, but you want to drive traffic to your website. And that's a big mistake I see companies doing is just saying, like, woohoo, today's Wednesday, it's hump day, have a great week, everyone. But there's nothing of substance there. There's nothing that's industry related, and there's nothing that takes them to the website. Remember we talked about those 200 factors at the beginning of the presentation, or somewhere in the middle of the presentation, that Google's looking at? Well, the traffic is one of them, and where that traffic originated from. So just imagine, Google has got two identical websites, which never happens, but if there were two sites, all things being equal, and one has traffic coming in from Twitter and LinkedIn on a fairly regular basis, Google's going to think, and I'm kind of anthropomorphizing Google, but Google's going to think, wow, there must be something interesting going on at your company, because all this traffic keeps on coming in from Pinterest and Instagram and LinkedIn and whatever platform that you're using. So that sends a signal called social signal to Google that, hey, let's pay attention to this site because people seem to be liking it and visiting it from other platforms. And if you've got interesting content on your site, it increases the dwell time. The dwell time is simply how long someone hangs around on your site. I mean, the sad truth is, if you look at your Google Analytics, most people are probably spending about 30 seconds on your website before deciding whether it's the right fit or not. And that's unfortunate when you spend so much time making your website beautiful and having all these pages and they're only there for 30 seconds. But at the end of the day, the website is there just to help get the phones ringing, or for them buying something off your site, or setting an appointment, or whatever it is that you do. So people see that A, you've got traffic coming in from social media platforms, and that B, they're hanging around and like engaging with that content, and they're hanging around on your site for longer than 30 seconds. That sends a pretty powerful signal to Google to maybe give you a little bit of a bump up in the rankings. So again, there's something, if you're already active on social media, but you're not driving traffic to your site, think of a different way to do it. So the next question is like, well, how on earth do I do that without being too transparent or too salesy? Well, if you're working on a blog, for example, then you've got something new to talk about. People don't necessarily want to visit your About Us page, but if you've got a new industry, like something going on, some sort of industry trend that you can talk about on a blog, well, there's a reason to go on Facebook and say, hey, we've got this awesome article, come check it out. All right. Videos. I'd like to see a show of hands. It's kind of a one-way presentation on who's doing videos. We are certainly, as a culture, consumers of video. My recommendation, generally, keep them short. A minute or two. There's always exceptions to the rule. But if you can talk to your industry and in your business, that will serve you well. So the video doesn't have to be super polished. It can just be done on a smartphone. You don't need to have a whole videography crew in to film what you're doing. But here's the SEO benefit, which is what this topic is all about. You're going to upload that video to YouTube. And by the way, who owns YouTube? Google does. So you can see how it's important. And then you're going to embed that video on one of your pages, on one of your landing pages. And that, again, it gives you something to tweet about on Twitter or Facebook to bring traffic in. Hey, we've got a new video to look at. It also increases the dwell time, how long people are spending on your website. But here's something that people almost never do, which is transcribe your audio. So if you're doing an interview with someone, or you're just narrating it, or it's, you're just doing kind of what I'm doing today, just you're talking to a camera, then I strongly recommend that you transcribe that audio. There's some real SEO benefits to doing so. You can do the transcription in a couple different ways. You can do it by hand, which is painful, but if you know how to type, then have at it. Or there's all sorts of online services. One that comes to mind is rev.com. I think it's like $1 a minute or $2 a minute or something. So you have a 10-minute video, and you've only spent $10 or $12 transcribing the audio, and they do a pretty bang-up job. Where 95% accuracy. Even if there's different people talking, it will know who's saying what. So the benefit, why we're going to all this trouble to doing this, is suddenly you've got a video and then you've got a whole section of text. Well, guess who's going to look at that text? And don't kid yourself that any human being is necessarily going to read through that text, but Google will. Their Google bots will come in and index all of that text, and it sends a very strong message to Google about your topic, about your industry, about what you're doing as a company. And it just kind of reinforces your position as an authority in your industry, which is exactly what Google wants to see. So if you're doing videos, take that next step and transcribe that audio. If you're not doing videos, get cracking. So my last slide, I like to think I've saved the most important for last. And it's sufficiently important that I have a whole section dedicated on another presentation. So maybe when we do Marketing 102 next month, I'll include a little bit more on content strategy, because I think it's the biggest bang for your buck. It doesn't cost a cent as long as you can string a sentence together. And it's so important. I see so many websites that are full of pretty pictures and very little substance. And if you do a word count, you see a homepage or a product page, it's got maybe 40 or 50 words. That just doesn't cut it. Google's looking 300 to 500 words as a minimum. Earlier on that listener question, we talked about high value content. So don't try to trick Google, but think like a customer. When you're chatting with a customer on the phone, what are the questions that you always get asked? Well, incorporate that into your content. So if you're selling a product or selling your service, tell people, well, how to get it, what are the benefits, and write a little paragraph. It doesn't necessarily need to be a wall of text, because no one wants to read that. But if you can break it up like a newspaper, break it up into different sections with different headlines, and have a longer page, Google will reward you with higher ranking. So please, I'll get into this more in another session, but please update your content. Even if you can just add another paragraph or two to each page, is so important for SEO rankings. And if you take a look in your industry, when you do that search to see who's ranking on page 1 near the top, I will go out on a limb and suggest that all of them have more written content than you do. So now that you know their tricks, you can easily play at their same game. Again, don't expect overnight or immediate success with this strategy, but in the long term, Google will reward you. And then just the business blog, we touched on that earlier. I wouldn't start with the blog. I would take a critical look at all of your service pages that describe your services that you offer, and all of your product pages and your home page and your About Us page, those types of things. But once you've got them looking the way you want, they don't need much more updating. So then you can transition into doing some sort of industry blog. Google will reward you for new content on your site, like new pages being it. Google doesn't like a dormant site. So if you take one thing away, hopefully you take more than one thing away from today's presentation, but if you take one thing, like a super low technical thing that anyone can do this afternoon on their website, is add more written content, and that will help you rise up in those rankings. So I think, Mackenzie, we've still got plenty of time left for 10 or 15 minutes for a few more questions, if any have trickled in.
We sure do. We have quite a few. So that was great. Thank you, Daryl.
My pleasure.
We can get started on a couple. So kind of going back to the social media bit, there's a question here, and it'd be interesting for your take. Is social media the best platform for marketing? What is your perspective on that?
My gut answer is no, but it depends on your market, right?
Right.
If all of your customers are living on social media, if you're catering to a TikTok generation, then that's kind of where you want to be, right? But if your customers aren't on Pinterest, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time there. For most B2B companies, even a lot of consumer grade companies, again, I think that I gave an example of a swimming pool. I wish I could see our audience and maybe cater to what industry that you're in, but just take that swimming pool analogy. If that's your company or your landscaping company or something like that, it's a small ranking factor. Again, it's one of the 200 things that Google is looking at, but it can be fairly minor rankings boost. So I would spend, if I had to make a choice on spending a lot of time doing quality social media content or quality website content, I would do the website content first.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question in a roundabout way.
Definitely. The next question, I have challenges with always having enough content to post on my social media. This person is a videographer. There's only so much video that you can share. Do you have tips or ideas on how to best plan out what to share so there's always something to post?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can come up with a top 10 list pretty quickly. One of the things you can do is take a look at what videographers are doing in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, New York, Boston, Miami. See what other people are doing. So don't limit it to your own, and then you may get some ideas that way. Don't copy them necessarily, like word for word or anything. But that's one way. But I think in the videography industry, like my goodness, I'd love to see some tips on what to do, depending on the type of videography. What do I do on the day of a shoot? What if it's lousy weather? How do I get my products ready if it's a product shoot? How do I get my staff ready if it's a staff shoot? So going back to that theme of kind of thinking like a customer, someone that's never hired a videographer before, what are the questions that they're going to have? Anticipate those questions and address them. Maybe you talk about how to select a videographer, or so you don't always have to be posting video clips, although in your industry, it might be good to do a quick 20-second question of the day, or whatever that happens to be. But there's so much content in your industry. In fact, that's an enviable industry. If you're selling like industrial products like capacitors, like, oh my gosh, good luck finding interesting content to tweet about every day. But videography, you can have so much fun with that. But just think like a customer.
Yeah, definitely. And I know even from like my own experience, there's definitely platforms out there where you can sort it out of your content. Like there's later.com, which is a great resource where you can schedule out and plan out what you have. Because I'm sure as a videographer, with all the content that you shoot and everything that you do, it's got to be hard to think when and where and how I'm going to get all this content out here because it's all so great. So.
And if you've got any downtime during the quarantine and everything, turn the camera on yourself and upload some of those snippets.
Totally. So the next question, I know you definitely touched on it during your presentation, but maybe for this person who didn't get to hear it, you could repeat. Do you need to pay to get to the front page of Google?
You don't need to pay, but it's a surefire way to get to the front page of Google. It's a lot of the things that we're talking about today. If you're on page 2 or 3 or 7, it's going to be a while getting there. So if you don't have the luxury of that kind of time, then certainly you can pay. But today's seminar was entitled, on a shoestring budget. So I'm trying to give you ways to make those lasting impressions without having to pay your way. You can even pay your way onto that map stack section that I was referring to. Just be careful, because you can also throw away your money if your pay-per-click campaign is not configured properly. And it breaks my heart to see people throwing good money after bad on a campaign that's not configured correctly, or no one's, they're asleep at the wheel and not monitoring how it's doing. But that is a surefire way, again, depending on how competitive your industry is, but that's a surefire way to get to page 1.
Mm-hmm. What is the best way to reach more customers? I guess maybe from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, so SEO is funny because it's not direct outreach, is it? What you're doing with SEO is you're positioning yourself to be found at the exact moment when someone is searching for your type of product or service. Someone that's never heard of your company before or never used your type of product service. So the outreach is really, on an SEO conversation, the outreach there is from a customer who's looking, hey, I need help. I need someone to assist me with whatever this project is that I've got. You want to be there when they're looking, and that's what SEO is all about, is being ready. So I think that question is a little bit more on like an outgoing marketing, which isn't really the discussion or today's topic, but it's like certainly important, because you may offer a service that no one knows that they need yet, right? So how do you get that word out? So that's a broader conversation. Again, social media is not a bad way to do it. But you certainly, you can position yourself well so that on the off chance that people are searching for you but don't know you exist, you can put up your little flag and say, here I am.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Next question. How do you get over a plateau in social growth for social media? Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, and this isn't meant to be a seminar on social media because I could do 2 hours just on social
For
media.
sure.
So I just wanted to touch it from an SEO perspective. So yeah, the plateau is hard. My suggestion is I wouldn't say less posting, but maybe focus more on engagement. So go and hang out where your customers hang out, and thumbs up what they're doing, and retweet what they're doing, and like what they're doing in hopes of a reciprocal follow. So if you profiled what your ideal customer looks like, and you know the types of things that they're interested in, you can go without like stalking them. You can go and just be social, right? And really encourage them and like what they're doing online, just in hopes, and it's kind of a manual process, right? But it can be effective in hopes for that reciprocal follow, reciprocal like, and building up your base of social followers.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that it quickly addresses that question.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Nina is asking, I work in the beauty industry and my website consists mainly of images. Think about a photographer's website if you were to envision it. I use the WordPress Yoast SEO image alt tags. Can you suggest how to effectively use descriptions as alt tags or maybe better tools?
Yeah, sure. So for those who don't know, alt tags are little descriptions of a photo. So if you are in the beauty industry and you have a picture of mascara, then you would just title it, this is a picture of mascara, or something descriptive. And it's there for a couple of reasons. The most important is so that Google, we're not at the stage yet, although I think we're awfully close, where Google can look at a picture and understand what that picture is. But I don't think we're quite there yet, and it's certainly not ready for prime time. So it's a way of telling Google, hey, Google, this is what this is a picture of. This is a picture of a hairdryer. It's also good for visually impaired people who are surfing online, and as part of the AODA compliance, that you really need to have those images tagged with this is a picture of. That's an important part of SEO. Again, I would call that a fairly small kind of boost. Something that your listener had mentioned at the beginning of that question is it's a website mainly of images. I still think there's no harm in having a little neat and tidy paragraph on what is it you're describing for the benefit of your users and for the benefit of Google. So if you've got a website full of pictures, and I think we've all seen them, find a spot to add those, just add a little description, maybe not a caption of the photo, but put the photo into some sort of context, even on an e-commerce site, that'll help you. Our listener also mentioned Yoast. So most people have a WordPress site. I think it's one of the more popular platforms, if not the most popular platform for building websites. Yoast is an SEO plugin. It's not bad. It's not perfect, but they will, as a light version of SEO, they'll tell you things like your meta descriptions are missing or your alt tags are missing. So pay attention to it. Just know it's pretty shallow. There's more depth that you need to go into. So kind of a loaded question, but hopefully I've touched on a few important things.
Is Pinterest a good social media site to use for driving traffic?
Yeah, and I've kind of addressed this already, and who knows when this question came in, so that's okay. But Pinterest is the absolute perfect vehicle for driving traffic if that's where your customers are. Mm-hmm. But if none of your prospective customers are using Pinterest, so if you're in the arts and crafts world, yeah, please, yeah, for sure use it. But again, back to my industrial components company, they're probably not on Pinterest and don't need to see pictures of a solenoid or a capacitor or flux capacitor or anything. So it really depends where your audience lives. And if you're going to use Pinterest, if you can find a way, again, just to drive traffic, like learn more about this, whatever this picture is, if there's a way to send traffic to your site, if you can use it in that way, then then yes, it can be effective.
Perfect. And what was the name of the scribing service that you had mentioned earlier? Somebody is asking.
Rev.com,
Rev.com.
rev.com. There's, if you just do a search for transcribing services, like online transcribing services, you'll see a bunch. There's some excellent ones out there. That's just one that popped into my head.
Perfect.
But I'm glad to see that someone's like maybe going to take. I'm sorry, I'm just glad to see someone's actually thinking about taking action on one of my recommendations.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes me feel so good. Yeah.
Would you add longer content to product description for each product, or would you recommend having a blog instead?
I don't think that it's a binary question. I think you can do both, right? I mean, not having looked at your website or knowing if it's an e-commerce website, I would add, like if someone's looking at the picture and Google's looking at your page, to me it makes sense to have a bit of a description or something about that product right there on that page, whether it's an e-commerce page or not. And then the blog would be more of a platform for expanding on the product and how it's used in the industry and why people like it. And
so this person actually just mentioned that it's an e-commerce website and they sell clothing, just to let you know.
E-commerce and?
They sell clothing.
Oh, clothing. Okay. Yeah. So I hate e-com sites that are just like, well, here's a picture, and that there's like there's no description, there's no text. I get kind of on e-commerce sites like, here's a picture, make a purchase, but yeah, it will help when people are doing searches. It'll help for a couple of things. It will, Google will, even on an e-commerce site, they're looking at every page. Also, just put yourself in the shoes of the customer. What questions are they going to have about the product? When I'm buying something on Amazon, for me, that's often the deciding factor is, can they string a sentence together in English and give me a decent description about what I'm just about to buy? The ones that get my business are typically the ones that do that. So on clothing, I want to know, is it a button fly? Is it zip up? Is it a drawstring? Is it, you can go on and on about the product, the textile being used, all kinds of things. Again, think like a customer and give me as much information as you can.
Absolutely. So there's two last questions here. We'll get to the last two before we wrap up. Is a detailed services page fed from a summary page a good idea?
That's typically how I do it. So I'll maybe rephrase the question for the benefit of the audience. I do like that idea. So my short answer is yes. That might be my first short answer I've given today. So if you sell 10 different products, I do like the idea of having like a landing page about, here are our products. And then you've got all 10 listed with a little snippet, just to tease their interest. And then from there, they can go on, drill down to actually look at everything they ever wanted to know about that product on a separate landing page. So from an SEO perspective, it probably doesn't make a ton of difference. But from a user experience point of view, I do like the idea of having just a quick summary. If you've got 100 products, you may need to think of a different way to do that summary landing page. But if you just got a small handful, then by all means, do a main kind of product page and then branch off to each one of your services or each one of your products. Oh, it looks like we've lost our moderator. It could be that we've hit 1 o'clock and the thing is shut down. I don't know if anyone can still hear me. If you're still with us, I guess that will be a wrap for today. Thanks so much for your questions, and thanks for listening. I'm not great with Zoom, but I think I can answer some questions if anyone still wants to hang around. I'm just looking through the questions. I think I've got them all. Thanks so much. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think we've hit the full hour. Take care. Have a terrific day. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I'm Daryl W at NetGain SEO.com. Thanks so much.